Welcome to our 2020 annual virtual meeting and exhibit attendees, and welcome to our panelists today who are representing actuarial associations across the world. So we're going to get started with some introductions. First, someone you all know, SOA President Andy Rollis.
Hi, Christine. Good to be here.
Andy, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am the current president. Thank you, everyone. But this is my final annual meeting as president. At the end of this meeting, I'll be turning over the reins to Roy Goldman, and he'll take it forward from here on out.
Awesome, awesome. Sunil Sharma, past president of the Institute of Actuaries of India. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us about yourself and your organization?
Thank you, Christine. It's indeed a pleasure to be a panelist here in 2020 annual virtual meeting and exhibit. My name is Sunil Sharma, and I'm the immediate past president of Institute of Actuaries of India. Well, as a professional, I'm the president of Actuarial and Enterprise Risk Management at Kotak Mahindra Life Insurance Company Limited. I worked in life and health insurance and reinsurance business over the last 30 years in various markets in India, US, UK, Singapore over the last 3 decades. Briefly, I would like to really touch upon the profession, Institute of Actuaries of India. The profession goes back to 1944 when Actuarial Society of India was constituted as a body to develop and grow the profession in India. We recently celebrated the Platinum Jubilee of Indian actuarial profession. I think we'd like to add that Indian actuarial profession has been the member of International Actuarial Association over the last 41 years. And it was only in 2006, which was like 14 years back, that Actuarial Society of India was converted into a statutory body by an act of parliament to develop and regulate the actuarial profession in India. Well, currently there are close to 460 fellow members, 160 associate members of IAI, with around 9,000 students at various stages of writing the examination. And we endeavor to grow the student members and thereby increasing the number of qualified actuaries in India.
Awesome, awesome. Frederick Weber, president of the Singapore Actuarial Society, welcome. Tell us about yourself and your organization.
Hi everyone. First of all, let me thank the SOA for inviting me to be part of this panel. Well, very briefly about me, I started my career in the AXA Group Risk Management in Paris, and I moved to Singapore in 2008 for various roles, and I am now the Chief Actuary of AXA General Insurance. So my work led me to understand different markets in Asia, Singapore obviously, but also Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and more recently, Japan. So I am a fellow of the French Institute of Actuaries and fellow of the Singapore Actuarial Society. So now about the Singapore Actuarial Society. So it is a relatively small actuarial association with around 1,000 members, but well, keep in mind that Singapore has a population of only 5 million. So the reason for so many actuaries per capita is that Singapore hosts many Asia-Pacific headquarters of insurance or reinsurance companies. Out of our 1,000 members, we have around 450 fellows coming mainly from the major actuarial bodies such as SOA, IFOA, CS, or the Australian Institute. These actuaries, of course, continue to be a member of their parent association, and they register with the SAS as a secondary association. We are not an examining body, but we hold some responsibility to grant the role of signing actuaries towards the local authorities. So we have built quite a lot of experience in organizing events and conferences. So for example, last year we hosted the Asian Actuarial Conference with more than 800 participants. And we hope one day to host the International Actuarial Congress, as the facilities here in Singapore are quite amazing. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And Tanya Manning, president of the International Actuarial Association and our former president of the SOA. Thank you for being here. Tell us about yourself and the IAA.
All right, thank you, Christine, and thanks to the Society of Actuaries for inviting me to participate in this panel this morning. It certainly is my pleasure. So yes, I am a pension actuary, a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. Way back in the day, I started my volunteer work in the profession, actually writing questions for Society of Actuaries exams, and it all kind of evolved from there. I live in the US in North Carolina currently. As Christine mentioned, I'm currently president of the International Actuarial Association. And not everyone is familiar with the International Actuarial Association, but if you are a member of the Society of Actuaries, then you actually are represented in the International Actuarial Association. What it is an international organization that knits together or brings together all of the actuarial associations across the world, across the globe. We have over 100 member associations that we represent, and through that, over 70,000 actuaries that are represented through the International Actuarial Association. Now, it is different than the Society of Actuaries in that our members are not individuals. So individuals do not sign up and pay dues to the IAA. Actually, the associations do. It's the way that the associations can come together and exchange ideas about how to advance actuarial practice throughout the world and to understand different ideas and different ways of approaching actuarial problems. It's also a way for associations to have a global voice when dealing with other international organizations or supranational associations, such as regulators and policy setters, and even associations that do research and that type of thing. Also, very importantly, the International Actuarial Association, its third primary objective is to make sure that we are protecting the reputation of actuaries. We should all be very proud that we have a profession that has very high standards and is regarded as such throughout the world, and we want to make sure that that is maintained. So the IAA works very hard to make sure that the member associations are protecting that reputation and that we're providing them with model standards and different types of resources so that they can continue to do that. And that's not just for the associations that are well established, like the Society of Actuaries, but also those associations that are still developing or growing or working toward becoming a member association of the International Actuarial Association. My day job, what I do when I'm not president of the IAA, I am an employee of Buck, and it's a consulting firm that's based in New York City. So I'm in New York quite a bit. And I head their US wealth practice, and I'm also their chief actuary. And I have a few international clients, so that keeps me on the road. So normally I'm not in North Carolina, although that's where I live. I'm usually traveling quite a bit, but I'm very happy to join this panel virtually this morning. Thank you, Christine.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to everyone. And just a fun fact about Tanya and I, we went through the FACT together and just had our 20-year anniversary as fellows. So for all of the new fellows who are watching this panel today, just see what you have in store for you. So, okay. So Tanya, thank you. I'm going to start with you with the panel questions. Thank you for sharing some information about the IAA. So, what are some differences that you've experienced with serving on these two roles, right? As president of the SOA versus president of the IAA?
Well, Christine, the experience has actually been quite different, more different than I even expected. The first thing is getting back to the very structure of what the IAA is about. As I mentioned earlier, the Society of Actuaries has individual members who take examinations and then they're qualified to become a member. They pay dues to the Society of Actuaries, and that's how it is built up as an association. The International Actuarial Association, or IAA, is quite different. Our members are actually member associations such as the Society of Actuaries, the CIA, all of these are members of the IAA. So a lot of what I do is to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those associations, which is quite different than meeting the needs of individuals. We do not provide examinations. But we do try to help facilitate the different associations exchanging information about how they qualify their actuaries or structure their examinations, their syllabus, for example. So that's very different, and you're doing a lot of more of relationship building and making sure those FMAs feel like they're fairly represented. And whereas if you have an association of individuals, each individual, while different, are just one individual. The FMAs, the member associations that we have, vary quite a bit. You have some small associations that are just getting started, some small associations that have been around longer than the IAA itself, and then you have very large, well-established associations like the Society of Actuaries. So sometimes it's quite tricky to figure out how to fairly represent and be that voice of the global profession when you have such disparity in all the different members. But it's truly fascinating. It's definitely an international group. I learn something every day. I love working with people who have different backgrounds and perspectives. That's how I like to learn, and that's how I think we can all grow. And being able to work in such an international and diverse environment has been very fulfilling for me. Challenging sometimes. You want to make sure that you're treating everyone with the respect that they would expect and the way that they want to interact. But it's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Andy, I think that you attended the IAA meeting in Tokyo last November. So
Yes,
do you want to share with us a little bit about that experience?
Well, you know, I forgot to mention that in my day job, I'm the global chief actuary of MetLife, and I have a lot of exposure to actuaries around the world, including to actuaries in Japan, and I've been a frequent visitor to Japan, so it wasn't my first time traveling there, but the first time attending an IAA meeting in Japan. And, you know, we are, the SOA is a full member association of the IAA, and we have representatives on various committees that the IAA hosts, and this is bringing actuaries together from different organizations to tackle different problems. I'm not on one of the committees, but it's frequently, the IAA meetings are frequently attended by senior members of the associations as well, presidents or past presidents and executive directors. One of the great advantages of the IAA meetings is it's a forum to get together and have bilateral meetings with the other associations. Not that often that I can get together. It's where I met Frederick. We had dinner with the Singapore Actuarial Association, Society, and many other associations. And it's just not, there's not another good way to do that. So it's a very valuable service. You know, as well as attending the IAA meeting, I do want to say, you know, unfortunately, a representative from the IAJ could not attend the Actuarial Association of Japan because they were celebrating 2 days later. Their annual meeting was celebrating 120 years of the profession in Japan, and I think they have outlasted everybody. So almost all our organizations are newer than that, but they were having their 120th anniversary celebration.
Awesome. Awesome. So Andy, you just mentioned that you met Frederick in Tokyo last November. So Frederick, I hear that when you guys met, you talked about how the Singapore Actuarial Society is providing a leadership role in Southeast Asia. So can you talk to us a little bit about how the profession is organized and a little bit about the growth of the profession in Singapore and the entire region?
All right. So yes, we met with Andy and the other SOA representatives last year in Tokyo for the IAA meetings and indeed the dinner that Andy just mentioned. I remember very well. And yeah, I mean, I want to add that attending these IAA meetings is a kind of privilege as part of volunteering for an association, and I encourage all of you really to take this opportunity. So it's been a great experience. Now, this being said, when we speak about Southeast Asia, I understand that it's quite far from the US. So let me start with a very, very quick introduction of Southeast Asia, because it's been 13 years that I live in this region, and I find it quite fascinating. So there are three things to know about Southeast Asia. The main three things are, first, that it has more than 650 million people. It's twice the size of the US and around 20% more than the size of the European Union as a benchmark. Secondly, as a region, it is today the fastest growing economy in the world, and it is expected to overtake EU and Japan by 2050 to become the fourth largest economy behind China, India, and the US. And lastly, something very interesting is that this region is really a patchwork of heterogeneous countries. On one end of the spectrum, you have Singapore, which is one of the 9 Alpha Plus and above cities in the world, and a country. And on the other hand, you have countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, or Laos, where insurance started not so long ago, in fact. And you also have giants like Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and these 4 countries are part of the top 20 populations in the world. In this regional context, the Singapore Actuarial Society has a unique position to support the development of the actuarial profession, and even more generally to support the development of insurance as an industry. So how do we achieve this? In fact, most of these countries have yet to found their own actuarial association, but we're working with their insurance association and with their regulators who organize events, and they try to gather local insurance professionals to listen and exchange with the speakers. So our role is to carefully select speakers working in Singapore who would be relevant to speak in these countries and showcase what actuaries do in mature markets, and most importantly, what they can do in developing markets. I myself participated in this program, and I went to speak in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, and it was really a meaningful experience, because you really have to explain what you do in simple words, slow English, very simple terms, because they have yet to found their own actuarial society. So it was more to showcase what actuaries can do. So of course, this year is a bit special because of COVID, but since 2016, we have organized 2 to 3 conferences every year in Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and we have quite a bit of success and good reception for these events. So we are looking for an expansion to other countries who knock our door and ask, okay, can you as well try to help us in the development of our countries, of the insurance industry? And this is as well something that we are working closely with the International Actuarial Association.
Super interesting. Thank you. That was really interesting. If we turn to India, Sunil, congrats on the 75th anniversary of the actuarial profession in India. That's very exciting, right? We should clap for that. How have you seen the industry grow and evolve in India?
Thank you, Christine, for your kind greetings. Well, I think India is one of the largest democracy in the world, and we actually kind of, in terms of our democracy, we kind of compare ourselves with US. I think, and there's a lot of freedom that people have here. It's a country of opportunities. One of the fastest growing economies, and the human capital being one of the major strengths that we have in India. If I were to look at where the actuaries are working in India, most of the actuaries are working at the moment mainly in the traditional areas, in life insurance, general insurance, health insurance, and quite a few are working on retirement benefit consulting areas, which is also one of the major employer of actuaries and the actuarial students. And then there are only a handful of actuaries which are working in data science analytics and the banking, unlike in the South African market. You see, over 400 resources are working in the banking sector in various areas. The other areas in which the growth that I see with regards to the employment of students and actuarial is the global KPOs. A lot of global insurers and the consultant companies are setting up their offshore centers in India. There are plenty of opportunities. I would say the insurance penetration in India is still very, very low. I would say, if you look at the numbers, it's 3.6%. It's like nothing compared with the average penetration of about 6.5% globally, and some of the larger economies even much larger than that. I'm saying average is 6.5%. So this actually gives a significant growth potential for the insurers to grow their business, and therefore more and more actuaries would really get employed in the insurance. At the moment, they're doing just the fundamental principle work, but I think a lot of areas in which they'll get employed over a period. And we would expect, obviously this year being exception, the pandemic and COVID-19 situation, but we would expect the insurance industry to grow at 13 to 15% annually over the next 5 years, and it's a tremendous double-digit growth which will continue. If you look at some of the demographic factors which are critical, to grow any of the businesses, the growing middle class sector, there's a young insurable population, there's a growing awareness about the need for protection over a period, and the retirement planning. This is going to support the growth in the insurance sector. And so we do have only 450 qualified actuaries, as I mentioned earlier, as compared to a large numbers that we have in the professions like FSAs in US or FIAs in UKs. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for us to grow the number of actuaries in India to meet the emerging needs of the growing insurance sector. So I think there's plenty of opportunities. I think the institute really has to work hard to really meet the need of the growing requirements of the financial services sector.
Wonderful. Interesting. Andy, you were recently in Mumbai, right? Do you want to tell us about your experience while you were there?
I was there with Andy Peterson, the Director of International from the SOA, and we visited with Sunil and attended the Global Conference of Actuaries, which is a repeating event. I think you're up to 20, Sunil, maybe 19?
Yeah, this year we had the 21st Global Conference.
First, okay, sorry. But, I've attended that several times in the past. I've spoken at it. This year I was part of a panel. We talked about the future of the insurance industry. And, it was very rewarding, and Sunil graciously allowed me to participate in the celebration events for around the 75th anniversary, special celebration. They did a great job. They released a spectacular coffee tabletop book on the history of the profession in India, and very, very nice cultural events as well. So thank you, Sunil.
I would like to thank Andy for you being there and accepted the opportunity to really open the coffee table book, which captures the entire history of the actual profession in India. So thanks for that, Andy.
It was my great honor.
I love that. I think we need one of those in the US. So as we think about growth around the world, right, Frederick, you talked about growth in Singapore. Sunil, you talked about the growth that we're seeing and hoping to see further in India. I think next about InsurTech, right? So I see actuaries going into this area. So if we want to just go back to Singapore, right, Frederick, how are your local actuaries getting involved in this thing, InsurTech, right? How technology is disrupting the insurance industry?
Yeah, well, one thing to know first about Singapore is that the government is doing a lot for InsurTech and, well, even fintech more generally. And it is such a big thing here that Singapore made it to the top 5 countries in insurtech investments globally, with US, UK, Germany, and India. So, okay, once again, keep in mind the size of Singapore with only 5 million people in the country. So, what is done concretely by the government? 2 things. Of course, there is financial support and subsidies provided to the startups. And there is as well the financial authorities loosening the regulatory requirements to allow a test and learn approach. So more flexible on the rules for these startups. Now, how actuaries are getting involved in this insurtech universe? Well, we can see already a few actuaries shifting from the direct insurance companies to insurtech startups, simply because, well, actuaries are considered rightfully as insurance experts, and, well, needless to say that the insurance industry is like no other because of the reverse cycle, right? So actuaries know well the product and the financials linked to these products. So when you are in an insurtech company, and for example, if you want to bundle 2 products, one from insurer A and one from insurer B, or if you want to build an aggregator, well, product actuaries, pricing actuaries, marketing actuaries would be the best candidates to get the job done, if you think about it. So it's quite natural that actuaries have a role to play there. And finally, I want to mention as well a recent trend that I personally noticed. Some actuarial students I had in my teams as interns, they go, in fact, work for these startups directly when they graduate from the university. And this is an interesting trend that I would explain from maybe 3 different reasons. First of all, fresh grads are obviously a cheaper workforce. Second is the working culture. Startups are generally more catered for young people, I would say. This is a very general comment. And lastly, uni students can generally code better in the latest programming languages available. And we know it's very different. It's very important today for actuaries to have this skill in their toolbox. So it's something that is very valued in insurtech. So to summarize, yes, insurtech is very important in Singapore, and yes, actuaries start being involved in it, but through 2 different paths. First is experienced practitioners who will bring their insurance knowledge to the startups, and the second path could be actuarial fresh grads who fit better the startup culture.
Interesting. Thank you. Sunil, what are you seeing in India in that respect? Are you seeing something similar with respect to insurtech, or how are the actuaries there really proving their value with new work and opportunities?
I think I agree with with Frederick. I think there's a lot of work which has started from Actuarial, and if you look at it, the work that happens. Say, for example, if you look at it, underwriting, in the life and health underwriting, traditionally we used to have things like people have to go through medical examinations. There's going to be non-medical limits. And above that non-medical limits, people will go for medical underwriting, and then the underwriters will decide. Now, I think there's a lot of usage of that insurtech is happening now in the machine learning tools and AI tools, in terms of using the past experience, combining that information with the credit ratings or financial ratings of that person, and a lot of other data sourcing, enriching the data source and utilizing them to really see how could you actually ease the onboarding of the customers and ease that underwriting process by the and ease that maybe the person does not have to go through the medical examinations, and there could be high limits up to which the cover can be accepted just by your AI or the machine tool. Apart from that, I think also a lot of and I think if you look at insurance, usually get associated with a lot of frauds, and the companies are have the actuaries are getting involved a lot in terms of designing those tools, AI and the ML tool, to really look at the past experience, to train that model based on the past experience in terms of what sort of profiles are leading to the frauds, and kind of classifying the whole new business into very high risk, medium risk, low risk, and actually have the underwriters to really spend their time on the high or very high risks. So I think there's a lot of that work has started in the insurtech in India. And I think if you look at the COVID-19, I think if you were to given the opportunity to insurance companies to implement insurance tech in the normal time, they wouldn't take a few years to implement that. But I think the COVID-19 has kind of accelerated the implementation of insurance tech in the insurance companies. So I think people have just implemented that in 3 months to 6 months sort of time frame, because it was for survival rather than actually having a project which could last for 2 years, which will take or usually 2 to 3 years to complete. So I think making significant progress in terms of implementation of insurance tax and adoption of the technology in the insurance companies in India. And actuaries have been playing quite a good role in terms of helping the insurance companies to implement those tools.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We're seeing similar in the US as well. So when we think about these changes that we're seeing across insurtech and the new roles and values that actuaries are bringing, and this is a question for everyone on this panel who wants to jump in. How is professional development and education changing, or how does it need to change to meet these needs or these new needs of employers, insurance, financial markets, right? And the needs both today and in the future, 5 years from now, let's say.
Christina, let me start just by saying, we know that big data and predictive analytics require new tools for the actuaries to learn and adopt. And I think that the SOA has incorporated learnings and education around that into our core syllabus. So future ASAs, future FSAs will have demonstrated those capabilities. But I think that there's a broader issue that I think actuaries are very well positioned to address, is these new models are increasingly complex, and they require us to be able to explain results. And that requires a lot more skills, not just in the hardcore analytic skills, but in the softer skills of being able to explain models that are very complex to the organizations that need to use the results of those models. And I think that's something that we have to look forward to as well, developing that kind of skill set in our actuaries. So, Tanya?
Yeah, I agree. Tanya?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Andy. I think that broadening our skill sets is going to be necessary. Our expertise in crunching the numbers is always going to be needed. You have to understand what you're trying to develop and what solutions you're trying to solve, what's underneath all of that. But the way that we communicate it and build those solutions using the new technology is going to really determine the fate of our profession. But even bigger than that, I think we look a lot at the disruptors, as Christine called it, for the actual profession. But I also think globally about the disruptors of our whole society. And I think that actuaries can do a lot to help us address the risk and the problems that are facing us. We have really big issues now, things like climate change and aging societies and the pandemic now and perhaps the pandemic of the future. And I think that for the actual profession to solve these big issues, we need to combine not only our knowledge from different parts of the world, which the IA works on, but also figure out ways to combine the different disciplines within the actuarial profession and try to knit them together. These problems, such as the pandemic, the current pandemic, is a perfect example. It touches every single practice area or actuarial discipline that you have is affected in some way by this pandemic. And if we are going to look at the overall risk and the way that we're approaching it, we need to figure out a way to kind of combine all of those, and not just with the actuaries, but bring in the economists and the demographers and the epidemiologists and everyone else to kind of work together and take these big problems and come up with big solutions. So use the new technology, but also take all of the skills that we already have and figure out how to combine them into bigger and better solutions. And I think that's the way that we're really going to change the way that we work as actuaries. And there have been some benefits to this lockdown, if you will, of everyone doing virtual continuing education as we're experiencing right now. It makes it much more easier for me as a pension actuary to quickly drop in on a session that's talking about climate risk, for example, and what life actuaries or general insurance actuaries are thinking about. And that gives me information that I can take and think about how I can apply that in the problems I'm trying to solve for my clients, or how we can work together to solve even bigger issues. So it's all very exciting to me, but I think we do need to have that synergy.
All right, so I think that we're at the end of our time. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us on this panel today. I certainly learned a lot. So thank you, Tanya, Frederick, Andy, and Sunil for your time today. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you very
everyone,
much.
please.
All right.
Thank you.